can't even begin building a science facility, and that's going to be a while, and every second that Irradiate, that science vessel, is not out, is going to be more and more effectiveness for these Mutalisks. Irradiate really is the tech of choice in order to stop Mutalisks. And it looks like a small medic and marine force is moving out towards the 9 o'clock position, and if Savior isn't careful, he might lose this base. He's going to have to pull his Mutalisks back and probably also send some Zerglings into this area, otherwise he will lose that base, and that'll be a terrible loss for him. Not pulling back his Mutalisks, instead he's going to go into the natural expansion where there are no forces really for Nada, and going to do a ton of damage to the SCVs in there, actually picking off a lot of SCVs. Going to lose this base at the 9 o'clock position. That base at the 9 o'clock is going down. There's no way that Savior's going to be able to save it, and Nada going to get a little bit of a win out of that, losing some SCVs, but taking down a full base for Savior, taking down that entire hatchery. And Savior still has a lot of Mutalisks out in the air. Hasn't really done too much damage to the marine count so far, throwing up a lot more of sunken colonies. And we saw him do this before. We have seen Zerg players do this before, where they throw up a lot of creep colonies just to hold off whatever forces are coming their way, and then just use their Mutalisks to continuously harass. And sometimes you don't like to see that all the time. You don't like to see that all the time because that is a huge drone expenditure on sunken colonies. But if you do manage to hold, and your sunken colonies do hold, it can be very advantageous. And now Savior with his Mutalisks are getting chopped with a lot of turrets and a lot of Marines. Most of the Marines go down there, but several Mutalisks went down as well. Although there are still a huge group of Mutalisks, out in the air. Might actually be able to do some more damage here, and picking off some of the Marines as they spawn. Actually going for the science facility as well. If that science facility goes down, that would be a huge loss for Nada. If that Nada loses that science facility, and Savior really should focus fire on it. Savior should really focus fire on it, and the science facility does go down, so I believe Nada will have one science vessel coming out. If not, no, actually it doesn't look like he does, unless it already just produced. Nada is not going to have any science vessels for a little while until another science facility comes up, and that is going to be an awful delay for Nada. That is a huge play for Savior. Absolutely huge play for Savior. Savior coming back in with his Mutalisks. Now just going for turrets, picking up 2 turrets. Going to pick off a 3rd turret. Might be able to pick off number 4 and number 5 before these Marines even get in. He picks off 4 turrets and then finally runs away as he sees the medic and Marine forces coming back in. But Savior coming back in, going to pick off another SCV, going to pick off a couple more SCVs, and this turret is going down again. And now Nada forced to send some Marines up into this back area. But they do not have a lot of medics. Not a lot of medics at all for Nada. And all those Marines are going down. His medics were not with his forces, and his Marines absolutely getting annihilated, and Savior just having some great Mutalisk micro here, doing a ton of damage to Nada's military forces. Nada unable to get a really large M&M force out, and his turrets are going down as well. This is terrible for Nada. Nada losing a lot of ground. Savior even has some idle drones here and there, rebuilding the base at the 9 o'clock position, and also taking a base at the 1 o'clock position. That is an audacious position, the 1 o'clock position. That is very risky for him. That is very, very close to Nada's base. But Nada is completely pinned into his own base right now, so Savior has to be thinking that he'll be okay to do this, since he's got Nada pinned in so hardcore. And the science facility has been rebuilt for Nada, and he is producing science facilities now. A science vessel, I believe he's trying to get them out of 2 starports now. But Savior coming back in with his Mutalisks, picking off the SCVs that were building more turrets, able to pick off more SCVs, and this is getting to the point where it's almost irrecoverable for Nada. Nada just losing too many SCVs, losing too many Marines, and this is starting to look very, very bad for Nada, even with his even though he hasn't lost too many buildings. He lost that science facility once, but he's losing a lot of his medic and Marines has been completely and utterly contained. Mutalisks coming in again, taking out another one of these extraneous turrets. And Nada is just looking in real bad shape. It looks like Savior may have even also expanded to the 5 o'clock base. And yeah, he's on 4 gas, and working on a 5th gas, and that is just going to be too much for Nada, as Savior, I'm sure, is going to be taking the Hive very soon if he hasn't already. And once Hive Tech comes out, with no science vessels out so far, there's one science vessel finally out for Nada. This is just going to be absolute destruction for Nada. Nada's going to be in a whole lot of world of trouble as soon as the next wave of tech comes out. Now we see some lurkers also out for Savior, and this is going to make it even harder for Nada to push out. Nada is just completely on the back foot, unable to really do much of anything here. And now Savior coming in, he's going to start taking down these temples here for some of Nada's temples with these lurkers. And once that falls, that's just going to make it even harder for Nada to really defend himself, especially considering his Mutalisks have kept the Marine count low, and they've been able to take advantage of that back area behind the mineral lines pretty effectively inside of Nada's main base. We are seeing Nada's first-person point of view, and we are seeing just how unfortunate his position really is. And if those lurkers get into that back of that mineral line, it is just going to be GG with all those lurkers and those Mutalisks. There's just no way that this small number of science vessels is really going to be enough. And now we're seeing Nada move to that back position, probably realizing that he's just falling so economically behind that he needs to work on taking this area. Actually not going to be throwing down a command center, just notice the temples. He must have noticed the temples, so he's throwing a couple bunkers back here to try and fend off these lurkers. But when the lurkers and Mutalisks come in together, a couple of bunkers just is not going to be enough. Nada's going to need a whole lot of more forces there, and he is actually loading up with a lot of medics and bringing a huge marine force and his science vessels up, so he is preparing to defend this place hardcore. If Nada's able to defend, we may see this game go on for a little bit longer. If he's not able to defend, if Savior is able to take down these bunkers, then we should see Savior win very, very quickly, although it looks like Savior is actually deciding to back off here, not going to commit to this engagement, deciding instead that he has such a huge advantage. Looks like he's also expanding to the 10 o'clock main. He's pretty much taken every single base that Nada can't, that isn't in Nada's control, that isn't Nada's main natural or his protected back third. It looks like Savior's taken almost all of them. There's only the two other natural bases for the 10 o'clock expansion, and that science vessel facility is going to go down again. Nada making a huge mistake, I think, in lifting that off and sending that over. If he wanted scouting information, he probably should have sent maybe a engineering bay or one of his barracks, but losing that science facility is just going to be so painful again. He only has 4 science vessels. He has up to 2 more buildings, so we may only see 6 science vessels out as Savior's force becomes very, very tech heavy. A lot of lurkers out. We haven't seen the hive go up yet, but I gotta think that the hive has to be up at this point. He's been on so much gas for so long that he should be able to get to hive and start pumping out some defilers, and before long it will be ultras off of 5 gas, and it looks like a 6 gas coming up relatively soon. That's just going to be so much gas for Savior. Now Savior coming in for an attack with a lot of lurkers, along with some Zerglings and this huge Mutalisk force. Actually, the Mutalisk force looks a little bit smaller, and actually a great irradiate going off on those Mutalisks, almost all of the Mutalisks going down. But it looks like Savior just has too many lurkers, a lot of lurkers going down. But the D-Matrix on a couple of these tanks, the D-Matrix on the tanks is actually going to allow Nada to survive. Nada looks like he is going to be able to survive here, losing almost all of his M&M force. Both players swapping armies, but Nada's army was a lot smaller, so he comes out ahead there in terms of the economic damage done to each other. But Savior, with so many bases, is going to be able to recoup and be able to rebuild his force so much quicker. And now we see tons of lurkers being morphed everywhere. Tons and tons of lurkers. Still only on layer. Oddly enough, Savior not teching a hive. I'm very surprised that he has not teched a hive. And now we're seeing Savior's first point of view. Yeah, we do see that he is up to 7 bases now, including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gas. 7 base, 6 gas Zerg. That is as much gas as he really is going to know what to do with, and that's just absolutely ridiculous. And this is going to be difficult for Nada to really come back from this. He's going to need to take down at least 1 or 2 of these bases for Savior, and take them down quickly as well. Particularly that 5 o'clock base. That should be his first goal, and then the 1 o'clock base. If he can take down those 2 bases and take one of them for his own, Nada might be able to start working his way back into this, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take some very, very good play in order to take down both of those bases and take one of them for himself. Because Savior's coming out with such a huge, massive, gas-intense force of just massive numbers of lurkers, and like I said, I'm surprised that he hasn't gone to hive and hasn't gotten out defilers yet with the advantage that he's had. But he's coming back in with a Hydra lurk force here, and the Marines are going to be caught again. It looks like Nada just doesn't have a lot of medics, only a couple of medics here, and the tanks look like they're finally getting caught. That D-Matrix on that tank is going to hold them off for a little bit, but now all the tanks are down. All the tanks have gone down for Nada, and Nada's reduced to a skeleton force of Marines and medics, maybe only a couple of tanks, and Nada, I think at this point, realizes that he is in big, big trouble. But I don't think I don't know what he's going to be able to do to really come back from this. Producing a couple more